Klint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza still being heavily talked about here on Radio Row, Moscone Center, San Francisco. We'll break that down, plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 4th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. Definitely very proud of that, and also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes each and every day, making sure we look good and sound good by way of the YouTube page. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. As we normally do, we'll close out the show hearing from you. Lots of calls, lots of texts. We'll try to get through as many as possible. That'll close things out, segment number 3. Segment number 2, all things Klint Kubiak, right? We'll talk about what he could potentially bring to the table for the Raiders as their head coach. We'll also talk about what could be a concern for the Raiders with Klint Kubiak as their head coach. Nothing doom and gloom, but just something to look out for. We'll talk about that, break it down, coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and really a recap of day 2 on Radio Row. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And every single day, it really starts to ramp up. Monday is kind of, all right, you start to put your toes into the water. Day 2, which was Tuesday, you kind of get into the shallow end. You get your feet wet, maybe even get your, up to your knees wet. Wednesday, Thursday, you deep dive. You're swimming in the deep end. You're doing backflips. You're jumping off the diving board and all that. And then Friday, you kind of relax a little bit, maybe even get into the spa or jacuzzi, whatever you want to call it. And then you start to hear it calm down by like Friday afternoon. So Tuesday, it gets busier. Wednesday is really full throttle. Like, you got to keep your head on the swivel because, man, you never know what Hall of Famer, what Gold Jacket is going to be walking by you, or what big A-list celebrity will be walking by you. And Thursday is a massive day. Friday, early in the morning, same thing. And then around noon, it starts to really start to tail off. You start to hear zzz, 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 bink, 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 boom, boom. Right, you're hearing all this equipment start to tear down and start to see people get ready and prepared for the weekend, maybe leaving town, or just getting ready for parties, and obviously the big game coming up on Sunday. So Tuesday, I thought was a really good day. We got going really early in the morning and was able to do the Raider Squad Show with Chantel Chan and Lincoln Kennedy from right where I'm at right now. And anyone who watched that knows that my head was definitely on a swivel. Right, I had people yelling my name. It's awesome to be back in the Bay. And, hey, man, Q, it's great to see you. And I'm out there trying to shout them out and do the show at the same time. But the highlight of the morning, I have to tell you, is being invited on the morning show on 95.7 The Game. The morning roast. Matter of fact, Bonte Hill was on it. I know he's not on the radio all the time regularly, but him invited me on the show. And for anyone who's like, well, why would that be such a big deal? You get invited on shows all the time. That was the station. That was the place that I wanted to go. That was the place that I had aspirations of getting back to the Bay Area when I lived in Texas. And no joke, when Zachariah and Daryl Guru Johnson were doing weekends, they used to have me on either Friday night or Saturday night or both to talk about the Raiders. And there was times when I was doing high school football and I was doing sideline reporting, I wouldn't leave the stadium because I had good cell service, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't mess up the interview with Guru and Zachariah. And so always had dreams to get back to 95.7 The Game. Obviously, that didn't happen. Got to Las Vegas, definitely not complaining. Love Las Vegas, love the opportunity, love everything about the situation. But it's something about being in the Bay and being on the radio station that you dream to be on, and on the morning show. And knowing that they don't talk about the Raiders very often, but to know that they brought me on, talked about the Raiders, and saw some feedback on social media like, man, Q, you need to go on there and talk Raiders more often. I would love that, right? I would make sure that I was available anytime that they called. But that was a big-time highlight, especially just talking about, landmarks in the Bay that I used to go to and, representing the East Bay and, shouting out the Gums Barbershop and, Everton Jones Barbecue and all the places that we used to hang out at, man. It was a lot of fun. So that was a really cool highlight. Hearing people continue to ask about, Klint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza. I was actually walking by, and a guy from ESPN New York, obviously the Jets were very interested in Fernando Mendoza. He's like, Q, I need you to stop and talk about Mendoza. Is there any chance that the Raiders are going to not take him? So, it's like Jets fans want Mendoza. So many people want Mendoza, but to have me on their different platforms and their different radio stations that talk about him, talk about the Raiders, talk about Klint Kubiak. It's been really cool. And as I mentioned on, really Monday and Tuesday's show, that the Raiders are a big deal on Radio Row right now. So there's a lot of different cool walks of life that we've been talking to. Talked to some people that aren't, necessarily celebrities, but, I talked to a young lady, Kimberly Byers, who's really a mental health coach. And, even talking to her for 10 minutes even put me in a better place. Not that, she worked some kind of magic or anything, but she kind of understood where I was coming from when it comes to, like, doing what we do and getting to the end of the week and sometimes being mentally exhausted and trying to find that, that middle even, that balance in your life. And it's really hard. When you're someone like me that has so many goals and aspirations and try to go hard in the paint with everything I do, it is hard sometimes to get balanced. But there's so many good conversations going on here on Radio Row. And, of course, we're here to talk about the Raiders, so definitely focus in on that. One of the conversations that I had was with Nate Tice, myself and Ryan Hogue. We talked with Nate Tice from Yahoo Sports. Mike Tice is his father. Mike Tice, obviously offensive line coach for the Raiders at one point, still lives in the Las Vegas area, about 10 minutes away from the Raiders facility. No, he's not coming to be the Raiders offensive line coach, as Nate told us that, he's living well with his pension. He enjoys his pension, but still has an itch to coach every once in a while. Maybe a consultant, a senior advisor type role he would take, but he's definitely not coming back to be an offensive line coach. So, of course, I had to ask him, about Klint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza, that potential pairing, if Kubiak signs his name on the dotted line and the Raiders go ahead and draft Fernando Mendoza, what he thinks about that pairing.
It's kind of ideal. I think there's a lot of teams. Every year there's going to be teams that need quarterbacks.
Right.
What's been very interesting for me is a lot of teams need head coaches and quarterbacks, and there was no head coach candidates, and there's no quarterbacks out there outside Mendoza. And I thought Klint Kubiak has earned the right to kind of have so many teams going after him. You got to include the Bills here too. The Bills were interested in Kubiak, but because they fired their coach after a divisional round, they had to wait. This is a huge offseason, obviously, for the Raiders because yes, it's a tough division they play in. There's going to be many steps that they have to make, but this is as good as you can get, I think, for the situation that they're in, especially with an incumbent GM and technically no quarterback on the roster. The fact that they have, Gino, but they have the means to find a quarterback of the future. Not a lot of teams could offer that to coaches. And I think also with Kubiak is that we've seen tight ends in Kubiak-Shanahan offenses play really well. Owen Daniels with the Texans, Reed with Washington. There's plenty of players, and now you got Bowers, who might be the best tight end in the game.
Right.
Ashton Genty, running backs in the Shanahan-Kubiak offense. That fits. They lift the floor of the offensive line, which is the weakest part of the team last year. There's auxiliary reasons for that outside just talent. I understand that from an outsider, but I do think that it's a natural fit. Like, it really is more marinated on it, and Mendoza's skill set really matches a Shanahan-Kubiak offense as well.
When it comes to Mendoza, one of the things that keeps standing out to me that I really like is what he's got between the ears.
Yeah.
How much is that going to help him, especially in a potential Kubiak offense?
Oh, tons. Like I said before, the fact that he was able to be consistent on third down and red zone, which the Indiana offense was not a lot like other college offenses. They actually changed the game plan week to week. It wasn't just like, hey, we're going to run the same stuff every week.
Yeah.
So there's a little NFL aspect to that, and I think that's exactly what you want. I know some people kind of laughed at the persona, how we talk. It's like, that's what you want of your quarterback. Like, he's tough as hell, and he stands in there, delivers, and he's over-prepared. If I were a player, that's the best thing I would want to hear. Who cares if he's he's not going to be like a model for Ralph Lauren.
This guy's here for that, right?
Exactly.
That's what Hoagie's here for.
So I think just personality-wise, it's toughness, man, and being prepared. It's going to win so many people in the locker room. And I think, again, when you watch that third down stuff, the fact that he was able to find answers so quickly, it's – you don't want to extrapolate too much, but it's positive signs. It's like, okay, he can handle this and do well in an offense that's going to ask him to do a decent amount. Other people are throwing this comparison around, but his high-end comparison to me is Matt Ryan.
Okay.
And I think that just as far as build, arm strength, Matt was actually a really good thrower on the move. We got to see it in a Kyle Shanahan offense. That was the epitome of it. So that's the high-end comparison, and I think that's what Mendoza brings, that toughness, a little bit of athleticism, but just a lot of stuff that he's just consistent on.
What would be the low end?
Goff is like the mid-tier. Low end, low end would be like Ritter. Like Desmond Ritter.
Don't go that low.
No. but you said low.
Yeah,
so
no,
yeah,
I know,
that's
I know.
just
Broken
hearts.
Yeah,
That's the low end of the scale.
Let's forget I said low end.
Yeah. So like a military be golf. I'm trying to think of some guys maybe from a few years ago, like from the aughts or something of that sort. Maybe a guy that could stand there. Jake Delhomme, like that might be the one right in there somewhere. That kind of starter. But like. I hate to say like, it's a high floor guy because he has more ceiling to him. Like he can be a tier 2 guy. Like the tier 1 guys are the freaks.
Right.
Mahomes out.
Exactly.
But he can be a Dak, level guy.
Yeah.
He could be a golf. How you view golf. That you can win a championship with that.
Absolutely.
As long as you have help around him.
So really good stuff. Nate Tice is very sharp. Yahoo Sports does a fantastic job, and he just breaks down college football, talks about the draft. This dude does it all year long. NFL action, obviously, you can just tell by the way he talks that he's a coach's son. So when guys like Nate Tice, bring some nuggets to the table like that, and we had like a 15-minute conversation. That was only, less than 4 minutes of what he had to say. But again, anytime that I get some good stuff and some feedback, good or bad, right, about Fernando Mendoza and Klint Kubiak, I'm going to bring it to the table. Steve Foster, man, you're going to the party, right? My guy Steve Foster, man. All right, y'all enjoy, man. I'll see y'all in a little bit. There you go. That's how it is. See, that's a taste of Radio Row right there. El Paso representing. I see y'all. So it's just that's what it is, right? You just walk by. People will come up and say what's up to you while you're on the air. It's all good. You keep your head on the swivel. You keep a party rolling, and that's how we get down. So, yeah, it's a great place to be, man. I wouldn't change it for the world. But I thought that was some really good stuff right there with Nate Tice on Klint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza. But I did spend a lot of my time on Radio Row on Tuesday talking about, Fernando Mendoza and Klint Kubiak. And so I want to focus in on Klint Kubiak. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2. We'll talk about the pros and the cons here on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple of the great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or even connect online. They can handle everything: W-2s, self-employed forms, work to get you every single deduction that you need. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. So right now, for a limited time, you can save on your taxes by getting it done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year, all you got to do, file by February 28th. So you still have basically the entire month. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. I also want to tell you about BetterHelp. February could be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals, so much talk about relationships. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life but you. But here's the truth. Whether you're married, dating, single, or just focusing on you, most people are still trying to figure it out. No matter where you are on your romantic journey, therapy can help find your way. It can help you get clear on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off of yourself. And like I said, it's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something. You can look one way on the outside, but on the inside, usually something is going on. Therapy can help recognize patterns that might be weighing relationships down. It can help you communicate better, set healthy boundaries, and stop carrying everything alone. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you. So you can focus on your goals, and if you want to switch therapists, you can do that at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. 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 All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Really want to deep dive into Klint Kubiak. I know he's not official like a referee's whistle when it comes to being the Raiders head coach, but it's highly anticipated. That's the only job that hasn't got the guys a seal of approval yet because he can't sign the contract until after the Super Bowl. So that'll come, next week on Monday. And so once that happens, then everyone can kind of give a a little sigh of relief, because then you know that nothing happened, nothing went wrong. So for the sakes of this conversation, we'll just pretend and act like this is, already a done deal. Just want to look at the pros and cons, because remember, this is a first-year head coach. So as opposed to Pete Carroll, who had the resume of being able to go in, build a team up, and get it to winning ways, obviously that didn't happen with the Raiders, but he had that resume. So you had something to look at and say, okay, this is what he could potentially do. Antonio Pierce didn't have the resume of anything, right? He wasn't the defensive coordinator, wasn't the offensive coordinator, so there was nothing really to hang his hat on except for the fact that the second half of the 2023 season, as the interim head coach, he found a way to get those guys to play very hard, win a bunch of games, and, show that there was a direction there. But it was no, exact, this is what the Raiders are going to do, this is what their identity is going to be, this is how they're going to win games. There was anticipation. We talked about it, but we didn't know 100%. Well, now you look at Klint Kubiak, and we know that he's a really good offensive coordinator. So on my radio show on Tuesday, I really talked about what you're confident in and what you're concerned with, or just have questions, and that's okay, right? If you have no questions about anything, I think you're just looking through silver and black glasses and assuming, everything's going to go perfect, right? This guy's going to be the next Ben Johnson. This guy's going to be the next Liam Cohen. He could be. Or he could not be, right? I mean, we just don't know. So we'll start with the positives. Like to start on a positive note. The pros, offensive play calling, right? I mean, obviously you know what he brings to the table, and he's going to have an opportunity to grow with Fernando Mendoza, assuming that they draft him together, right? So that's a really good 1-2 punch. The relationship between the quarterback and the head coach is so critical. They've got to be able to speak the same language. They got to be on the same page, similar to what Sean Payton did when he hand-selected Bo Nix. I, for one, don't believe that Bo Nix is an elite quarterback. I don't. But I think he's perfect for what Sean Payton wants to do. So when you look at Fernando Mendoza, he doesn't have to be elite. He just has to be really good and really fit with what Klint Kubiak wants to do. And the good thing about Kubiak is he's worked with multiple quarterbacks and has gotten some really good play out of them, whether that's Kirk Cousins, whether that's Derek Carr, whether that's Sam Darnold, and now a possibility to have an opportunity to do that with Fernando Mendoza. He's able to get the best and the most out of QB. So that is something that I'm very positive about. Setting up the playmakers for success. I'm very confident that he's going to be able to do that based off what we've seen. Jackson Smith and Jigma is their number one wide receiver, just like Brock Bowers is the Raiders' number one target, right? And how many times have we seen Brock Bowers bottled up? Now we're going to see Brock Bowers put in position to succeed, right? If that's lining them up in the backfield, if that's lining them up in the slot, if that's putting them in motion, if that's, creating some kind of, as I said before, magic tricks, some motion, some just like I said, some magic tricks in the backfield to throw off the defenders. Whatever it is, Klint Kubiak has the opportunity to do that. If I'm Bowers, if I'm Genty, if I'm Big Mike, if I'm Trey Tucker, right? Jack Besh and Dante Thornton, they have a lot to prove as well. I mean, going in the second year. But if I'm these guys that are veterans, I'm feeling really good that I'm going to be in position to maximize my skill set. Now, all this, is thrown out the window if they don't take care of their offensive line. But I'm one that's a firm believer, maybe I'm putting too much trust in them, that they know that the offensive line was not good last year and that they're going to address that's going to be the number one priority. I firmly believe that. I'm not concerned that they won't. I just think that that's a no-brainer. So, obviously if they do that, that's when all this offensive, positivity comes into play. Offense won't be stale or predictable, I don't believe. They'll have a commitment to the run game, but obviously they'll be very aggressive in the passing game as well. But the running game will definitely set up the pass, and that's good for Ashton Genty. Again, offensive line has to be on point. We know that. But they're going to have a commitment where we've seen many times, the Raiders running the ball, and then it didn't work for a couple plays. All right, just abandon that, right? I don't think that we'll see an abandonment of the run game. I think that it's going to be something that they're going to lean heavily on and make sure they're able to, have that success and, run multiple plays, have time of possession, right? All that, to me, are all positive. So play calling, setting up the playmakers for success. Offense won't be stale or predictable. And probably most importantly, Kubiak and Mendoza, those two guys can grow together, have that relationship, and speak the same language. Concerns, cons, right? We did the pros. Let's do the cons. I talked about the run game, commitment to the run game. Well, if you look at the Shanahan tree, if you look at the Kubiak tree, what do they do in the running game? They use the zone blocking scheme. That, as I talked about the offensive line, that concerns me only because anytime the Raiders have used the zone blocking scheme, it really hasn't worked for them. And I don't know the actual reason why. I'd be lying to you if I said this is the reason why whenever they go in the zone blocking scheme, they can't do it. Now, if that means that they have to go and get 3 or 4 new starters on the offensive line to be able to run that scheme, so be it. If that's what it takes, cool. I don't care. But for some reason, no matter who it is, whenever they bring in that zone blocking scheme, it never seems to work for the Raiders. So it might just be personnel. The guys that they have in place aren't built for that. And, you know, I look at a guy like Colton Miller and think, okay, he's athletic enough where he can run that zone blocking scheme. You know, Ryan Hogue told me that he thought DJ Glaze would be good at that if you move him inside the guard. Put him at the left guard position. You feel confident that the blind side of Fernando Mendoza is protected. Okay, cool. So you got Miller and you've got Glaze, left tackle, left guard. What's happening from the center to the right tackle? Those might be 3 new starters for all we know, right? It could be. I'm not saying they're not going to be. I'm not saying Caleb Rogers, Charles Grant, JPJ, I'm not saying those guys aren't in the mix, but, they could be if they're not fitting in with the scheme, and that zone blocking scheme is something, as I mentioned, has never worked. So that's one, concern, little con in this situation. Overall, being a CEO, it's one thing to be the offensive play caller. We've seen a lot of great offensive play callers. We've seen a lot of great defensive play callers that don't really succeed when they are the head coach, like Norv Turner. I think Norv Turner was a very sharp offensive mind. Don't think he was a very good head coach. Mike McDaniel, he's in L.A. with the Chargers. Really good offensive coordinator. Like, I think he's a good offensive play caller. I think he has a sharp offensive mind. Not a great head coach, in my opinion, right? I mean, there's guy Josh McDaniels, right? I hate to bring him up, but he's been to Super Bowl now with this Super Bowl coming up on Sunday 10 times. Not a very good head coach. Really good offensive play caller, right? That's where he butters his bread. So it's sometimes, I'm not saying Kubiak's not going to be a really good head coach, but until we see it, since he's a first-time head coach, we don't know. It can go one way or the other, right? A lot of people talk about him being a leader of men, and he's not, a guy that they think is going to be able to capture the locker room because he's not a rah-rah guy. He's not very loud. He's very private. I don't think that's going to be a real issue. I think people know how to lead in their own way. Everyone doesn't have the same style. I'm different than other people. Other people are different than me. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's going to be okay. I'm sure him learning to lead the men in the locker room, I'm sure that'll be a learned process when you get to start to know the guys in the locker room, and everyone's not, led the same way. You can't coach everyone the same way. Some people you can be really hard on. Other people you have to come at a different angle. Like, it's just like anything. Everyone's so different, and there's not just one, blueprint on how you lead guys. So I don't think that's going to be as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it. And then just building the staff. It's still going to be after the Super Bowl, so it'll be February 9th before he can even possibly get hired. And I know he has a Rolodex. I'm sure he has a short list of guys he'd like to hire, but how many people are comfortable with taking that job at this stage of the game? How many people has he already talked with? How many may be on the fence, right? And, again, I think that he'll be able to do it. And he's probably got a list of like 40, and some have either taken jobs already, they're going to take jobs, or they might want to stay where they're at, or they'll go with Klint Kubiak and be be on his coaching staff. So that really, to me, is also a concern, but I think it's kind of a minor. So the last 2 really minor concerns. Look, going back to leader of men real quick, Gary Kubiak has 4 Super Bowl rings. Gary Kubiak was not a very loud guy. He was a very honest guy, as John McClain tells us all the time. He wasn't a rah-rah guy at all, but he got it done, right? He's a really good head coach, and John told me on Tuesday on my radio show he was the favorite coach that he covered in Houston, right, between the Oilers and the Texans, and he's covered plenty, right? I mean, John's been covering the NFL since 77. I was born in 76, right? So he's been covering it for many, many moons, just about 50 years, and his favorite head coach that he covered in Houston was Gary Kubiak. So he wasn't very rah-rah and loud and that guy, but he was able to get it done. So that's all that really matters, and I'm sure he'll find a way to do it. The guy's been around the NFL game since he was, basically a kid, right? Just a baby growing up around the NFL under his father, Gary Kubiak. So those are my pros and cons. Cons, zone blocking scheme. Concern overall, just CEO, leader of men. Don't think that's a real big issue. And then building the staff, I'm sure he's got a short list, and he'll work it out. So to me, pros and cons when it comes to Klint Kubiak as potentially the Raiders' next head football coach. What says you? What's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show. 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about a couple more great sponsors we have here on the show, and the first one is Home Chef. As the new year gets going, and it is going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or even quick lunches. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Recipes are simple, but they feel elevated. Even restaurant quality with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. Save time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. So for a limited time, Home Chef is offering all listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert. I also want to tell you about Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in. Take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or without hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charges at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding material, and direct deposits save you hours of work each and every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime will give you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedonnfl. One more time for the folks in the back row, gusto.com/lockedonnfl. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start out with a call from Sacktown Mark. He's calling to talk about the potential of the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl and the ripple effect that can cause in a positive way for the Raiders and Fernando Mendoza. Here's Sacktown Mark.
Hey, Q. This is Sacktown Mark. Just wanted to quickly call in about Klint Kubiak becoming the head coach of the Raiders as it seems. Obviously, it's not official. But I just wanted to bring up another point. Another caller from Sacramento actually yesterday brought up this point that Klint Kubiak, it'll be cool to see him coach in the Super Bowl in a championship game because Fernando Mendoza obviously won the national championship with Indiana, and now Klint Kubiak has the opportunity to win the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. I want to take it a step further. All of Raider Nation should be rooting for the Seahawks this weekend because think of how it will look going into free agency, being able to say that our head coach won a Super Bowl, the most recent one. Like, that might be a tiebreaker for some guys if, like, the Raiders are neck and neck, like you talk about the center from the Ravens. I forget his name, but like if the Titans offer him the same contract that the Raiders do, the tiebreaker might be like, hey, this head coach just won the Super Bowl, and we got a national championship winning like quarterback, and maybe that obviously like Fernando still has a lot to prove in the NFL, but just the fact that Klint Kubiak has that win under his belt, Super Bowl win, could really work in our favor and could be a great selling point. So anyways, that's all I had to say. Once again, as always, thank you, Q, thank you, Ari, and go Raiders.
Sacktown, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And, yeah, I do think there's something to guys that are proven winners, right? I think that would help. It shows that they know how to get it done. Still has a lot to prove as a head coach and an NFL starting quarterback, but the proof of just concept when it comes to winning is there. And I think that's a good thing when you're trying to create a culture and trying to create, a winning atmosphere. That's something to me that I believe is a real positive. And it kind of just sets the bar of, all right, this is what this team wants to do. They want to make sure that they win games and that everyone's got their mind set on winning. That's a good thing, and I do think it's a possibility, but still big-time shoes to fill and not big-time shoes to fill because, well, there hasn't been any winning, but big-time opportunity, and, they've got a lot of work that they got cut out for them. That's the way I should say it. So when it comes to Klint Kubiak and Fernando Mendoza. But Sacktown, thanks so much for that call. Definitely appreciate you. Got a pretty lengthy text here from Clayball from Riverbank, Cali. So what's up, Q? It's Clayball from Riverbank, Cali. It's time to put on my tinfoil hat. We know Tom Brady's beliefs is not starting a rookie quarterback right away, and I think the theory deserves more attention. Klint Kubiak and maybe now Rashid Shaheed to the Raiders. I know a quarterback with connections to these guys. Call me crazy, but you could probably guess it. I think there's a chance that Derek Carr comes out of retirement to come home to the Raiders. I think his injury forced him to make the decision to retire, but right before the season started, I'm not sure if he'll still be under contract with the Saints if he comes back or if he'd be a free agent. If Carr does indeed have the desire and health to return, I think he'd be a great bridge quarterback as well as understanding the situation. His mentorship to Fernando Mendoza would be great. Seeing some clips of him talking about the Raiders on Instagram could really see the love in his eyes for this organization. I'm not sure if this should be an unpopular or popular idea to the nation, but I think it'd be fun and a nice way to turn away from the bad quarterbacks in recent years. I think Carr being the quarterback coach or have a place on the staff would be a good alternative. If not now, then someday. Anyways, thanks for you and Ari and what you do. Go Raiders. P.S. I miss your pronunciation of Mel Geitberg Jr. That's from our guy Clayball from Riverbank, Cali. Thanks so much. And I'll tell you, Clay, it's funny. I think that that's a good and a bad opinion. And not towards you. I think that Raider Nation that's listening to it, someone's going to think, great idea. Others are going to be like, bad idea. And me personally, and I had some people hit me up on social media like, why don't you like Derek Carr? And I was like, it's not that I don't like Derek Carr. I think that he was very good at what he did for the Raiders. He sustained that position of quarterback, and it hasn't been sustained since he was sat down, right? I just think that, especially him coming back as a bridge quarterback, first of all, he's under contract with the Saints, so they have to trade for him. And I don't see them trading for a bridge quarterback. That's why I talked about Kirk Cousins the other day. If he gets released, I could see them maybe making a move for him. I just don't think that it would be a good idea because half the fan base loves Derek Carr. The other half of the fan base doesn't. It's got him back in the mix again. Fernando Mendoza coming in. Some people are going to want to see him right away. Some people aren't. If he gets sat down, if Derek Carr gets sat down, everyone's, the people that are Derek Carr supporters are going to start all of a sudden being angry towards Fernando Mendoza because, just like we see with Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell, he's got a lot of supporters, and we have a lot of people out there that, think that he hasn't gotten a fair shot, and they'll scream from the mountaintops. And I just think that he's such a divisive guy, and just there's so much, either one way or the other. It doesn't really seem like everyone's on the same page with him, and I just think that the organization in general is ready to move in another direction and just move forward as opposed to kind of looking back in the review. I say it all the time, don't look for your ex, look for your next. I think that's what the Raiders need to do. I do think a bridge quarterback is a strong possibility. I don't think Fernando Mendoza is going to start week one if, in fact, they do draft him. And I think that Tom Brady and the way that he believes that rookie quarterback shouldn't start is one of the main reasons why he won't. But maybe Klint Kubiak would like to have an established quarterback go out there and try to showcase his scheme before he puts a rookie out there. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from the 804. Couldn't quite understand the name, but he's calling to ask about a few wide receivers that he's thinking about as potential Raiders. Here it is, a call from the 804.
Yo, Q, what's up, man? It's Gametime from the 804, man. Just calling, I know everybody heard about Kubiak and, stuff like that. I ain't trying to bore y'all to death about that. But my real thing is, man, of course, we got to address the offensive line. Everybody knows that as well. But that true number one receiver, man, Brock Bowers, he tight end, so let him just be tight end. But who would you rather have, man? Probably got to trade for A.J. Brown. George Pickens is available. Keon Coleman from Buffalo. That's an option. I don't know, man. I'm just, I think all three of them could really work in Vegas for real, man. Keon Coleman probably isn't a true number one, I would say, but, I think, with Kubiak coming in, man, could scheme up some things and get him out there, get him open and stuff like that, man. So, I don't know, man. Let me hear what y'all think. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate you. Great question. The Raiders do need a true number one wide receiver. Now, I've said it multiple times. I think Rashid Shaheed will sign with the Raiders. He's not a number one, but he could play. He's very successful in a Kubiak. He's been with them, 3 different places, right? He's a guy, or 2 different places. I can see him ended up with the 3rd place with the Raiders. Seattle traded for him, but he is a free agent. And I just think that would make a lot of sense, not to mention the special teams ability that he has as far as kick and punt return ability. He's really good at that. And as far as the other 3 guys that you mentioned, I don't see a move for Green. I don't see a move for Pickens. Those type of attitudes or characters are not really guys that John Spytek and company are going to want in that locker room. And Keon Coleman, it's hard to tell what he's got. I like Keon Coleman a lot. He was a high number round 2 pick for the Buffalo Bills, but he had maturity issues. He got suspended for a couple games. The owner came out and said that they didn't really want him. I don't know, man. He's got a lot to prove. I don't think that the Raiders is a good place for him to all of a sudden try to reestablish and get his career jump-started. So I don't think that any of those 3 guys are real possibilities. The Raiders definitely need a number 1 wide receiver. I can see them really spending a lot of capital to try to get that number 1 wide receiver in the draft, even if they have to move up a couple spots if they see a guy starting to slip a little bit. But I think that's what they do. I'm not 100% sure if going out and getting a free agent, maybe a Pierce from Indianapolis, maybe that's a guy. There's a few different options, but I just don't think that the 3 guys you mentioned, I don't think those guys are on the Raiders' radar at all. But thanks so much for that. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Raider Rob in Pittsburgh. Raider Rob from Pittsburgh here. While listening to your Monday radio show and today's podcast, I must admit I'm a little worried about the talk of putting Fernando Mendoza under center. I always believe that a good coach builds around his franchise quarterback, not making the quarterback learn a new style. I did enjoy hearing about the running game. And if you watched any Indiana's games, boy, did they stick with the running game. So my $1 million question is, what blocking scheme does Kubiak use? Zone or power? For the life of me, please tell us power. Thanks for all that you do for Raider Nation. Enjoy this week of the Super Bowl. We are back, baby. Raiders. That's Raider Rob in Pittsburgh. And sorry, Raider Rob, I can't lie to you. Zone blocking scheme is what the Kubiaks, the Shanahans, that's what they always do. And I know why you said, please tell us his power, because that's where the Raiders succeed. They've never been very good at zone blocking. That's why when I talked in segment number 2 about the cons, that was at the top of the list, right? Because, again, that is a concern of mine. But, Ryan Hogue pointed it out to me. If you have to replace the guys on the offensive line, replace the guys on the offensive line. Get the guys that can run the scheme. If you don't have the guys that can run it, go get the guys that can. And if you're giving this guy a ramp to build up this team and really grow this thing, then you have to allow him to do that, right? And so it might be a slow build. I'm assuming it's going to be a slow build, but it might take a little bit longer, especially trying to get the correct offensive linemen in there. And there might be some tough decisions that are made, but that's what has to happen, right? If they're going to run that scheme, unless he all of a sudden is going to run the power blocking scheme, and I'm sure that his offensive line coach, whoever that's going to be, has the capability of doing either one. I'm sure that they're very skilled and understanding with that scheme. I just know how Kubiak's offense runs. A lot of that is that zone blocking scheme that his father, Gary Kubiak, ran, Mike Shanahan ran, Kyle Shanahan runs. All those guys from that Shanahan-Kubiak tree all run the zone blocking scheme, which makes your average running back run for 1,200 yards. It will do really well for Ashton Genty if they can make it really work really well, right? If they can figure it out and get the right guys to run the scheme, I think Ashton Genty would have a field day. I know that's what he was running behind in Boise State, and we saw what he was able to do there. So I could see that going and that working, but you got to get the right guys to run it. But thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. I'm going to make my way over to the media party and do a little networking there before I go back to the Airbnb and lay it on down and get ready for a very, very busy Wednesday on Radio Row. I can't believe it's already just about halfway through the week, and I'll be making that trip back to Las Vegas, getting that car and riding back to Las Vegas coming up on Saturday morning. So we're halfway through the week already, Raider Nation. We'll have more news and notes, obviously, coming up tomorrow's show. We'll have more calls and texts and plenty of feedback and a lot of good stuff that we'll bring to the show. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.